I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting for the month of October. And we'll begin with roll call, or I guess we do the Pledge of Allegiance first. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for the record, so we established we have a quorum. Can you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Absolutely. Doesn't matter what order.
No.
I know we're talking about the last time. Okay.
No.
Stacy Perkins.
Here.
Smith.
Greg Parker's in his place.
Nick Stevens.
Here.
PH. Earl Tucson.
Here.
Call established. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get into the project review, a couple of things that are slipped into the meeting packets. Everybody has a copy of what's suggested as revised application. What instigated this are two things. We never had a subdivision review application. We never had a special permit review application. In addition, the last audit the planning board had, or the village had, for our certified local government program, which is a historic preservation education and enhancement kind of community program, which our zoning regulations are linked to. One of the criticisms was that we didn't use any documentation regarding our role as the historic review board. So we were long overdue last time, and we kept saying we wouldn't do that, and we never did. And we got dinged again. So we got right on that. And so overhauling the whole set, we have a zoning application for general purposes and a zoning application for subdivision, zoning application for special permit, and then zoning application for historic overlay district. And it says on that the planning board, historic review commission, and historic review. So that's, so if somebody comes in and is adding a porch and their property is in the historic district, historic overlay district, they would get the general application and they would get the historic overlay district site plan historic review application.
What's the difference between the historic review commission?
Well, it's basically the planning board implementing the historic review guidelines, like in talking like we will this evening about the whiskey coop. It's in the historic district, and the planning board is obligated to uphold our historic district development guidelines. And it's not just enough, so says the certified local government program, for us to say, yeah, we read it. They want to have it right out front that we're aware we're acting in that capacity, as well as site plan review. And then in another form we have that is separate paper that says we reviewed it, and the coastal local waterfront revitalization program, that our decisions are consistent with the regulations and the coastal policy. So that's the gist of this. Then we have a site plan application for outside the historic district. So there's, when an application comes in, the clerk's office is going to have to work in conjunction with Jim, I guess, to say, is this in the historic district? If so, this is the site plan application. If it's outside the historic district, they get the other one.
Is it a site plan or is it just a zoning application?
Site plan,
When would
site plan review.
What would that be?
Hmm?
Outside the historic district, will the site plan be used for other than subdivision, and you got a separate?
Well, no, what, Wait a minute, I'm not sure I understand your question.
General zoning application outside the historic district is generally all we need.
Right, oh,
You don't do site plan review except for things like subdivisions. Really, I guess maybe special permits.
well, but we have a
Yeah, you
special
separate
permit.
authorities for those.
So and that's why we're giving this to everybody,
Right.
because it's Dave Altieri and I looking at this over the last 5 years, and we look at it and we go, okay, we'll get to it, and we never do, and then we finally got back to it, and then we looked at it and was like, well, that doesn't make sense. So this is not really ready yet, but that
Right.
we want you to look, and so that's a really good question, like our use table, where it says it needs site plan review, it doesn't need, there might be some uses that are site plan review that are not in the historic district, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like a dog kennel,
Yeah.
I think that's might be an example.
Or if you asked us to review something, probably.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm gonna go by the use table.
Yeah,
And then the thing that
so going back to these, because I'm really
Yeah.
confused on this. Planning Board Historic Review Commission. And we got certificate of compatibility.
that's the one I'm just getting to.
Okay,
So when we make a decision,
oh, okay.
when we
Yeah.
make a decision, we should fill out this paper, we meaning probably I don't know, but maybe during the meeting, like, like we're supposed to be looking for projects that are in the waterfront management area. Look at the coastal policies, and is it consistent, like the Madison Barracks Marina or the houses, is it consistent with the local waterfront revitalization? And we don't typically do that. I mean, if there's a problem, we intuitively do, but we don't say policy 34 says supports public access.
We wouldn't do that unless the structure was on the water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
So this could apply to something outside the historic.
yeah, right,
such as
but
areas.
these are great questions, Merle.
Right, all that, all
On
that,
that table, there are some site plan, like the folks on Hounsfield Street that built a two-family.
Exactly, yeah,
So there are some.
yeah,
but this,
and
could this have also been used with all the people that need to put in, water retention, after we had the flooding,
yeah.
all those, that would. just-
Great balls and stuff like
Celebrate-
And
that.
then
Yeah.
probably most importantly, really, in terms of why we're doing this, and is the historic review, like we're supposed to look at the standards, and now will be a document, like, and ones they were particularly concerned with over the last 5 years or so, we've authorized some demolitions.
Mhm.
We look at the historic regulations, but this is going to be a record to say, we determined the structural condition exceeded the value of the property to bring it up to code, and therefore, and it had no historical significance or architectural significance. So it's just a paper trail documentation of our fact finding
This
should,
is kind of in response to comments we got from the state.
right,
Yeah.
but more so because Sackets Harbor hasn't really taken advantage of the CLG program quite a while. But there are some grant programs that actually are like public education about, like, if we wanted to get more public involved with, we've talked about like the windows and door replacements, and would we want to change the historic overlay district boundaries to be consistent with the National Register boundaries? So we could have public meetings, and there could be special designation of historic structures like the Stone House on Washington Street, the fact that they could do whatever they want to that. And we would have basically nothing to say. They could put vinyl siding on it. They could put an A-frame roof on it. I mean, there's no site plan control on that structure. It's not in the historic district. But if we had a local designation as a structure of significance, then that's something that we could perhaps tag to our zoning. So the CLG program helps with training and public education, that grants, funds, hire a historic architect to come in and train us or the public, that sort of thing. And then the other thing that's been helpful over the years is in applying for other grants to say Sackets Harbor is a community in good standing in the CLG program. And they're like, oh, well, that's worth an extra 3 points in their score, that kind of a thing.
But that's not the answer to Washington Street. The answer to Washington Street is or the question is, why was that ever left out of this?
Right, well, so the question is,
2 ports on that street.
why, does the community want to change the historic overlay district? To change the boundaries? So, I mean, but that's not up to us, that's a village board thing.
Right.
But, so anyway, that's what this program is underlying a lot of these issues. So take a look at these and maybe at sometime between now and the next meeting and send comments, emails, questions to everybody or something like that. We can get it back to, just Peggy and Johnny and Dave and say, yes, this is good, and let the village board know. And the other new thing, I just saw this email today from Peggy. It's another New York State Council of Mayors, like a organization the village is a member in, planning and zoning webinars. So there are 4 coming up in November, December, and they're each 1 hour. So I forwarded the email to you. So if you're lacking a couple hours, you can pick those up in the next 2 months. So you can check your inbox for that. All right. Minutes from our short meeting in September. Any suggested revisions?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Stacy and Merle. All in
We
favor?
made all the motions.
Yeah.
Second.
Abstain from not being.
Okay, so Dick's abstaining. Stacy, Merle, and I. So those were approved. And I don't think it's in your packet, but a short summary of our meeting. Went to the village board for their meeting last night. Okay, we have nothing new under old business for Madison Barracks LLC with the paint color or the door that they've special ordered. And Jim, you haven't heard anything? Nothing new from Jason Berto for the rain garden at lot 14 at Lakeview subdivision. 106 West Main Street, we granted conditional approval and we wanted the applicant to send us the roofing material specification. Johnny, could you contact, and I remember after that meeting, 2 meetings ago, I couldn't read the phone number on the application copy I had. It's 2457 Adam B. Shores. That's the building that's the gift shop, whatever it's called. And they re-roofed with a product that had been previously approved. But we need to let him know we want for our records and to submit to us, it's this particular product in this color. Instead of just saying, well, it's been approved on other buildings, we want him to say to us, I used Owens Corning black, blah, blah, whatever.
Okay.
And he needs to get that to us. And
It's
then,
already been put on, I think. Is it already-
oh yeah, he did it before we even reviewed it.
Did it when Cheryl still owned the building, right?
No,
I mean, we're talking about the gift shop?
yeah. No, wait, 106 West Main. No, this is not the gift shop. This is, the yellow house next to Tin Pan. That's it, not the gift shop.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
it's
right.
Stephen.
But I don't know,
Barbara's former house.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the owner.
The
And he-
former Sarah Beth.
Right, but the applicant was the contractor, Adam B. Shores.
Yeah.
And he had a leak, right? And he had to do it. And he called you and he called me. And as soon as I hung up, I went out for a walk and the crew was already there. So,
But
That
did he do an application? Just not
Yeah.
identify what
I-
it was?
He did, yeah, and that's all. He put in the application, but we just didn't get us, we just wanted a
we wanted to
sample or
put it
whatever.
on him to tell us.
Yeah.
And then we decided it was conditional, so he doesn't have his permit, but it's up, it was already done, but for the sake of completing this process.
Right.
Okay, now. Phew. Number 2462 Whiskey Coop. The applicant's requesting special permit and site plan review to install the front entrance vestibule to the restaurant. The project's in the village core, the historic overlay district, and the National Register district. And we do have a hearing scheduled for this evening. We've reviewed this 3 previous years, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And as in those reviews, there are no provisions in our law for temporary uses or temporary structures. And for those 3 reviews with Jim Corbin as the enforcement officer and this board, we decided it was a special use permit. And because our law does allow us to limit time periods for a special permit, we have done so. There are some important sections of our law that govern this. It is in the historic overlay district, so we have design review guidelines, and that's page 22, and things like the materials, the roof form, rhythm, scale, those sort of things that we would document on our new form. And then section 8.3 special use permit, and there's review criteria. Things like will not create a public nuisance, hazards for public safety, that sort of thing. Harm the character of the neighborhood. And going back to our earlier discussion that we are the historic review board. And it just to refresh everybody's memory, this is page 48. The planning board shall act as a historic review board for the purposes of these regulations. As the historic review board, the planning board shall review and evaluate the historic and architectural compatibility of all regulated activities within the historic preservation overlay district in accordance with site plan review standards as set forth in Article 8, Section 8.6. Exercise reasonable and responsible judgment of historic, aesthetic, and architectural considerations in carrying out its authority and duties as historic review board. And then go on to say we could retain professional consultants, conduct surveys, and so on. But those first 2 items are exactly what we've been talking about with this form. So it's in our purview and responsibility to look at aesthetics, compatibility, and the guidelines set forth in the law. The application includes the general zoning and the seeker form. And that's it. Last year, we granted special permit site plan review approval. And we are required to do a statement of findings. And we determined there would be, and I'm reviewing this because it's basically the same application for the 4th year in a row. Our findings, there would be no significant adverse impact on the environment, and we need to do seeker. It says there's 1 outstanding zoning violation noted by the enforcement officer pertaining to the seasonal use of an unpermitted tent, which is currently under consideration for a special permit. Specific regulations pertain to seasonal uses and structures are not included in the zoning law, and that issue will be reviewed by the village to determine if and how such requests can be reviewed and regulated while maintaining the integrity of the historic overlay district as defined in the law. Another special permit finding design inconsistencies noted by the board include the vestibule siding and roof line. The applicant's representative stated that for the 23-24 winter season, the request is to use the previously approved vestibule with the intention of developing an improved design for future seasons, consistent with the review criteria of the overlay district. The board granted approval with the following conditions. The vestibule is permitted through April 30th, 2024. Any future vestibule must be reviewed for consistency with the overlay district criteria and all provisions of the zoning law. Approved November 15th. Okay. Scott Goodrich, you're here on behalf of the applicant, correct? Anything you want to add to this?
It is the same one from the previous few years. With no changes.
Okay, let's take care of seeker. The seeker form part 1 is completed successfully. I think the previous 3 years helped with that. So our job is to complete part 2 and 3.
In part 1, does it really need to go, it doesn't go before the zoning board, right?
No,
Okay, so on page 2 of 13.
does it say it should?
Yeah, we can make that a no.
Thank you.
And then
Hold on a second.
over to special permit. On page 3, what do we say there? The use permitted or allowed by special or conditional use permit.
It is a special permit, so that would be a yes. Thank you, Merle. Page 3 at the top of zoning, item B. So Johnny, I'll give you my copy if you want with these two. I noted the 2 suggestions.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything else? I looked at the items that we typically find omitted. Provided, everything else seems in order. The, resource consideration, well, we look at public health, safety, impact on wetlands, habitat, and so forth, geologic resources. The one that would be most likely to have a significant impact would be on historic resources. But given the size, design, and location of this, it seems reasonable to say there would be no significant adverse impact. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Dick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So, let's talk about it before we get into the hearing. Probably nobody's gonna say much. Last year, and I was looking through your application contents last year. We did talk about the design quite a bit.
Mhm.
You don't have any new,
It would take an all new vestibule to change the design. And we didn't end up doing a new vestibule at all.
okay. All right, let's open the public hearing. No comment? We'll close the hearing.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you have any estimate on what it would cost to? You would have to replace the whole thing, what it would cost to replace the whole thing.
The ones we were looking at previously and we opted not to do because they're $10,000.
Really?
Were those, like, I think last year Jim mentioned like commercially prepared winterized vestibule. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but a lot of them are. That when you look at a lot of them, they're the cost effective ones are canvas. I couldn't imagine bringing that here, sitting in this chair with like the canvas and cloth ones that are meant to be temporary. So the temporary ones that are a wooden structure that are also able to take down and reuse, they're $10,000.
Well, here would be my point with that. Yeah, $10,000 a one-time expense, yes. If you're gonna take it down and reuse it over the years, how many years life expectancy would you have out of one of those?
I don't know that we talked to them about life expectancy. We just didn't have money for.
Yeah.
Because I think if you amortize it over several years of business, that 10,000 becomes very small.
Yeah.
Well, the one that we have now that we
Understand that.
spent $7,000-8,000
Any
on.
business, you still look at it.
I can understand it from an accounting
Okay.
standpoint, but not from a cash flow
Okay, but
standpoint.
we also, there was a request that Janet read from last year's, and I think 2 years ago when this came up, we also talked about the design. But last year, and you have it written there, about the request to look at a new design. And I think, now here it is, October. It's been almost a full year since that application, it's been 11 months. And I think there could have been more effort into looking at something and maybe presenting something or figuring out, yeah, it's gonna cost us $10,000. Over the long run, is it worth it for us to do it or not? Because this is the fourth time you're in, right?
Yeah.
And it had been 10,000 the first time, now it's $2,500 amortized over the years. And that's a lot of difference. Yeah, cash flow is one thing, but you also have to look at the overall.
It's meaningless from their standpoint.
Yeah, right,
It's a
and
cash basis
Right.
business.
our first one was still in the, I forget exactly what it was plus or minus $7,000. So that's still. It's still, a real money in a seasonal business, and then 10,000 with a second location open in Syracuse. 10,000 definitely doesn't exist, even understanding amortization across multiple years. So it wasn't that there was lack of trying. The cost effective options were visually not acceptable. The ones that would be acceptable are expensive.
I think it was 2 years ago, Harold Crane came along with Cheryl and was expressing his support for the restaurant. And we were discussing these issues and we approved it as is. And a little bit right afterwards, Harold made a comment, something about like, well, the roof design, that would be pretty easy to fix. And I kind of felt like, Harold, you should have said that during the meeting, but I can understand why he didn't. But there seems like, well, reading the concerns that the siding, I think, is more like the vertical, like 20, 30 years ago, I think it was like called T111 kind of board. Is it a vertical line siding?
There are no lines.
Oh, that's right. Maybe that was the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
right.
okay, so there are two concerns, the siding and the roof line.
Right.
The siding of the main structure is horizontal.
Yes.
So my question to everybody, but to consider is, could you do a siding that on the structure you have to make it match what's on the main building and see what you could come up with? I think Harold called it like a false front, almost like something that would be compatible. And I can't visualize, I used to have a picture on my phone, it might be there, but the pitch of the building, the main building, I think there's a little front, lack of a better word, like eaves or something projecting, which presents the problem for patching the roof. But ask somebody, I mean, Harold's in the building business and helped build 2 subdivisions, and Cheryl's got how many restaurants? 5, 6?
Is that clapboard, just clapboard siding, or is
Something
it
like
wide,
Yeah, it's a
Clapboard.
wider,
wider? clapboard?
and maybe that wouldn't look right. I don't know, but there's only, we're talking about 10,000 for a totally new. What, I would pose the question, what could you do what you've already invested to be consistent with what we're concerned with? Could you come up with some siding that matches? And see what your design friends can do with the roof line, because that's it, really. I mean, I think those were our 2 major concerns.
I think we were asking, could you put clapboard siding over?
'Cause that's right, originally it wasn't that, and then the next year you came back with smooth siding, so I think that was considered an
So
improvement.
what is the roof line requirements that we're looking for to match?
Well, they're not specific, other than, let's see,
I think what we requested is that it be congruent with the roof line of the building.
right,
I guess that's what because we have the one eave that is coming off the front of the building.
right,
But then we have the top structure of the roof
Which is a peak.
as a peak.
Right.
We have, and the vestibule does have the peak.
but they're different peaks and different angles. Yeah, I mean, those are the things like,
Is it just matching the angle of the
yeah,
peak?
like under guidelines for design review, and this is very general, but roof forms, the roof pitch employed on a new building or addition should be similar to those found on the adjacent buildings, and I think it's implied on the original building. If a gable type roof, its orientation to the street should be the same as roofing material should be harmonious. It talks about proportion, rhythm, directional emphasis. So I think the main thing is matching the pitch. But it is tricky because of whatever that eaves that's projecting forward. I can't begin to tell you how to fix that.
The pitch is less steep on the main buildings, what we're saying.
I don't know which it is. I don't know which one's more steep. The vestibule or
But
the
if-
main building.
Yeah, if they were the same, it would be like having some of these houses that have several gables and they're all the same.
Right.
You know, you
It's
put-
still gonna be nestled up against the,
Projecting.
right, the eave portion of the roof.
Right, well, and again, I don't know how to solve it, but I'm just saying those were the 2 things. And instead of just saying, well, you have to go buy a whole new thing. Yeah, thank you. A whole new vestibule, see what I don't know, I'm not a builder kind of person. I just can say, oh, that looks like it fits, or, I kind of missed the mark on that, but I can't resolve this. I don't know, Harold might know. I mean, he might not,
I want to point out that Harold's not one of the owners.
I know,
And he made that comment and he said it's not a big deal, but he didn't do it for us. He
I
didn't tell us what to do.
I
He's not
understand,
involved in the business, so
I realize
that's
that,
a really tough comment to now have to
right,
to bring up every couple
Okay.
years that he said it would be easy,
Yeah.
but
See the masters
you
on the
know,
top.
well,
he's not
okay.
doing it for us. He's not doing it for us.
So let's just scratch that,
And I
then
don't
this
know.
board is asking the question, can you make the pitch of the vestibule roof be consistent with the structure itself? And can you do something with the siding to match the siding of the structure? That's the question I'm asking. And that's me, not the others, but I know that was the concern.
What's the dimension on the footprint?
This way, that's here.
Mhm. Right.
The problem is, of course, that little overhang.
Yeah, the hip roof is a little bit.
Right.
What's the footprint dimension of the vestibule?
8 by 6, 15 feet high.
Thank you.
8 by 6?
It's on page, 2 or 3,
Oh, okay, thank you.
I think.
Is that including?
The
roof
height
lines?
is what?
I thought it was 15 feet high. I would assume that includes the peak to
It'll
the.
be at the peak of the
peak.
roof, it'll be 15. Yeah.
So I would expect that I know that we try to keep things, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
I'm supportive of a vestibule. I'm gonna put that up front. I think 4 years in a row, expecting this to keep going through as is with no seeming or minimal attempt to conform, it's difficult. But I do understand, we're trying to keep roof lines and stuff similar with a small temporary structure. It needs to be a steeper probably roof so it's not bearing weight of snow. No matter what, I think the focus in my mind for a temporary vestibule would be a design that looks like the building it's attached to versus the angles of the pitch for a vestibule. That's my only thing. I think that the argument is of, we can't afford it because we opened a second store is a difficult one for, that's a rough one to just, we can't conform with the law. So we're going to keep assuming that this is going to be approved because we don't have the cash because we opened a second store.
And it's not about not conforming for the law. I don't know what the direction is. If the direction is, I don't know that it looks right when we have two roof lines that match. I don't know what the right direction is.
I think one of the things that caused a problem is the overhang on the front.
Yeah.
Is there any photos of what was last year?
Just showed it.
Last year.
No,
with
that
the
didn't have the
vestibule.
Oh,
vestibule.
with the vestibule.
I don't remember.
It's an 18, I mean, it's a straight frame. I mean, I don't want to say, think of a shanty with a nice roof on it. And it has, since the first, it has been a bit of a dance. You have improved it. I remember the first application. It was a shanty, and then it has the windows. If I'm not mistaken, windows were added in that second year. The sides were filled in to make it that smooth. And I even like the roof was maybe changed, but maybe it was the same one that just got added on once it became, I'll say, more temporary or seasonal structure.
It'd be nice to see a picture of the.
Well, and I've got it. Does that roof pop off? Is it, you know what I mean? Is that one of like pop it? Because I'm thinking where that sits, if you could pitch a roof flat with a smaller angle, that almost sits like a lip underneath it. So instead of having one of these, you give one of these guys, so that possibly, or just one on an angle. The hard part is going to be the snow and the weight of
I
it.
don't think that would make, as if I
Right.
owned it, I wouldn't want it.
Right, and I don't know, I am not a building, that's probably why it's the stupidest thing.
Because
going
if you
on in
make
my
it
mouth,
high enough,
but-
if you make it high enough to be effective at one slope, it's gonna be over probably the first overhang of.
Well, if it's one slope, it's gonna come down on the people that are walking in the door.
Right, and that's what was my other thought, like you might need a gutter underneath it to then catch some stuff. So again, you're creating more problems and solutions in this
I
scenario.
think the problem, I don't know whether it was too steep or not steep enough.
It's just not congruent. It's just not congruent. And that would be hard to match the congruency. I mean, you're taking an older structure and then putting on a newer structure and trying to.
Well, it's pretty hard to match when you've got that overhang.
Right, you've got a much larger surface area for that peak. For me, the roof is, I don't think you're ever gonna get a roof that fits on there correctly, just because that's not gonna be found. If we're looking at the two things that we brought up last year, that roof line is either going to be a much bigger investment that you probably want to do, because that would now make it a much more, you'd have to have almost permanent structure to fill in that area. Instead of having just one peak on one side. I would look though at, and it was brought up, very, I want to say cheaper alternatives that would maybe look like to have the outside look integrity with the integrity of a historic building, possibly even something you take refurbished cedar shakes. I know it's not with the same outline. You are now looking to match period styles of some type, so that it's going to look like it's something added to the front, but it's going to look like something that's meant to be added there, not just for a couple months. Does that make sense? That is, especially when you drive by it aesthetically, you're not going to be drawn to it. You're just going to think it's going to blend in, because there is a lot of hodgepodge older buildings down there. So that, for me at least, I would look at maybe that would be where the money, the bang for the buck might go. I don't know how much that might entail, those types of things and we would have to actually see that plan too, if you're.
And I was looking for the picture, you're talking about on the exterior, the siding?
Yep.
Yeah, a material that would enhance the.
Right.
appearance.
And again, that way, and if we could at least have an idea of what that would look like. This isn't, and again, we're continuing this going forward. It would show that in good faith, you are at least trying to come up with some type of solution to this, at possibly minimal cost, but then also we have to uphold our guidelines. You know what I mean? And again, I know what I look at possibly. I'm not your business, I'm not the business owner. And I'm not a builder, so I'm not trying to tell you what those things are. I'm just trying to give you options of maybe cost effective. If you could please, change the aesthetics of that. I don't think you can change that roof line. I don't think any building.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever going to be solved. The roof line issue is you're just going to have roof lines all over the
The
place.
only way you could resolve that is to change that other hip roof that's
Yeah.
across, to have it blend into it, and then you cause leakage.
Right, and at that point, you might as well start doing a whole bunch of other stuff because you're really investing into that, and now it's changing the whole scope and sequence versus trying to continue something that has already been approved, but also making them try to not just keep doing the same thing. That every year we have these concerns, and these concerns are not being addressed, which is frustrating because it feels like, we keep having this, well, if we do this, then we'll do that, and back and forth.
I think a plan, to me, it would be an easier sell. Like, again, I'm supportive of the vestibule, right? I think it makes sense. But I feel like a plan going forward, because the next application is going to be the tent. If we can get a vestibule, maybe it doesn't exactly match the building like we want, but if we can get the period specific look to it, with that look, and have it maybe go with a period specific tent plan. So those two things match. So everything matches for 4 months out of the year, 5 months, or however long the thing's for. I think that would make sense. Like, hey, we're doing this. We have a plan. It's a 3-year plan, maybe, or a 4-year plan, whatever it might be. Then here's the end state, what we'd like to do. I feel like that would be an easier pill to swallow for a more of a temporary type of patch every year, pushing this through. That's my recommendation.
And I, in agreement with both what you're saying in the sense that jumping just for a minute into the tent discussion, that isn't consistent and we have to get into that. But I said all along that I like the idea that you're trying to keep I love the idea you're trying to keep it open all winter. I love walking by and seeing trivia night and the furnace on and that little stove out in front. And honestly, the walls and some of your seasonal decorations, it's kind of becoming an entity. It's not just a lawn with a white tent. And so sort of what you're saying, a composite feel for the two physical areas, the little building and the seating area. But, I don't know what to say about the roof, but I think maybe if I do know even you had like a wreath up and some other things, and it's like, even that diffused some of the inconsistency of the structure. It's like, that's such a simple thing, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Could we fool our eye a little bit more with some of these other enhancements?
Well, and then also kind of backing off that one, if we have a consistent plan, and this, again, I think being on this board and being here, this grew out of the pandemic as a necessity, then turned into a much more, I would say, business convenience. It was there, let's do it, and business was good. So now it became part of the business plan, if you will.
I would say that.
I mean, at the vestibule,
Started
yeah,
September of 2020.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I would say that it grew out of that.
but it made
But
it.
it kind of, it's compiled into that, them of the tent.
It is something that allows us to operate in the winter, in general in the winter, just because we would likely end up closing because on those cold stretches, because a vestibule is for heat management, but also when you have seating right next to the door. So it's a functional portion of maintaining it, you know, open during cold winter months, but I wouldn't say that it grew out of the pandemic.
Right. No, and I was speaking more to the tent scenario, but, and I also, and again, I'm in favor of it. And as being frequent to these businesses and other businesses around area, I have a feeling that we'll have more applications for vestibules. But, you know, when you walk into some of these places and they're, oh, yep, it's cold. And when you go to areas, New York City, large and small, like George, they are there. They're all over. They are all over. I don't want to say, unfortunately, you have become a guinea pig, but that might be when we have to go back and 5 years from now, if this hypothetically in Tin Pan wants to put in one, Goodfellas wants to have one because it's cold when you walk in there, we can at least say, look at, they didn't just do this. This was a process of years of working on it for us to kind of get to that middle ground to say, all right, we're good. Then we can use that. So then other businesses are coming in and say, hey, we want to do that now. We have firm grounding to say, well, this is what it should look like. And it has some of these basic specifications. Because again, we're not the owners or the builders. But
We don't make homeowners do that.
correct, but that's a different, I mean, if you're gonna be living with that one, you can build a porch.
And this is a
Or-
special,
We don't make homeowners.
Correct.
If they were in the
But
historic
cons-
district, we would.
Yeah, if they're in the historic district, we would.
and it's a
You
special.
haven't done that.
I would have
Wait
a
a minute.
porch.
You've got
Be an awning.
awnings, you've got stone on the front of the houses. They pretty much did everything they wanted to do on General Smith Drive. Now, how can you say that, Dick?
It went before the board. It was
They all come to the
reviewed and
board?
approved it.
Yes.
But
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You're fine.
Board approved it. It comes to us, then
Right.
that's our
But what I'm
job.
saying is sometimes it's difficult. Well, for example, what is historically, what's consistent with historical? Didn't Main Street burn down twice?
I mean, yeah, but you've got,
99 was the last time.
yeah, you've got, I mean, you've got, please, this goes to the state stuff. What did they say is part of it? What I'm just looking at is if we have to uphold these guidelines and are also trying to move some of these things forward to not be hampered and have our hands, I mean, really, I don't want to say this, the ambiguousness of the law here is the fact that there's nothing in here, then why do we have to say yes at all? We can just say straight no. I think where we're trying to get some middle ground here is, since
you
there's
ask-
nothing in here, let's look at putting something in
What are you
here.
asking for? Are you
Again-
asking for the siding to be consistent?
Yeah, I would say again, and we're not fools down there. We all walk down there all the time. You can look around and I mean, again, something as simple as look at the buildings that are around you across the street, find similar common tones. The building that you're even in, I mean, it's a very nice building. You have common tones that at least look, that was built probably what? I mean, again, that is not a historic structure itself, so therefore putting in a historic 1800s would look out of place, but would be something that is consistent with the rest of the historic that is down there. You've got a marina down there that is,
Talking about the building to the left of the Whiskey Coop?
I'm talking in general, the whole area down there.
Building's the worst looking building on Main.
I know, I'm talking about the one across the street, the ones across the
The
street,
green building?
the green buildings. You know, there is some integrity, if you will. Again, otherwise, why would we have the historic district down?
Oh, I'm saying we want to maintain integrity. I don't know what you're saying. I mean, do we want them to try to make the siding consistent?
Yeah, that's all I asked was that one.
That was
That was one of the critiques on the last time was that it was not consistent with the rest of the downtown.
Right.
That was what we said.
And it's not
Siding.
structure.
Right, the zoning structure, and that was said. What I'm trying to do is at least, if that is in violation of ours, that is not a structure of historical integrity, and that is not fit, that vestibule is not there.
And the,
Can we do something to at least find that middle ground, so it says, all right, there, it is at least, we have to keep the aesthetics of the downtown. It says that in our zoning law.
and Jim, as terms of the siding, your interpretation of what we're debating is like the main Whiskey Coop's siding is horizontal.
Yeah.
And we do mix materials on structures, stonework and,
Well, I think
But
that's
so-
the reason you said that smooth over the T.
Right.
Mhm.
right.
But certainly clapboard may be more, you know, consistent with
But the,
its own building and other structures down.
I mean, I would, and again, I'm not telling you, I would say use your judgment. You are intelligent and thoughtful people in your business. You're not gonna want something up there that looks ugly. You look around and be like, all right, this looks good. And even just, if we table this and then present, this is maybe something that we could do. This is something that by next November, pop, 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 there,
Month from now.
type of, right, type of thing where we're at least now we are not reneging on the things that we made them do last year and said, if you don't do this, we're not going to approve you. We are actually backtracking on our own things.
I didn't think there was anything that was said, if you don't do this, we're not approving it.
I think that I remember the conversation last year was that this was a 1-year approval. That these conditions need to be discussed if it were to come back again. And these went both with this and the tent. And then the conversation coming back was, we will be coming back next year with much more thorough plans of how this will look.
That was also under the expectation that there was gonna be new guidelines for these temporary structures, because tents and vestibules were getting discussed, and there was gonna be new verbiage around it.
Right, and that's true. That was the intention. It hasn't happened. So here's what we're talking about, that for this previous season, the request is to use the previously approved vestibule with the intention of developing an improved design for future seasons, consistent with the review criteria of the historic district. And then further down, one of our conditions, one of two, was future vestibule must be reviewed for consistency with the historic overlay district and all provisions of the zoning law. So is it consistent? Are they new? No. Is it consistent with the current? That's what we're discussing. And how much leeway do we want to grant, I think?
What color is it? Or is it road?
It's the same colors. It's the same team color.
Beige.
With white trim around the windows.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Okay.
Jim, are we missing important things in this discussion? Or would you, I'd say feel free to add to your.
Well, I'm just gonna throw a real curveball.
That's
You mentioned that you had looked at canvas structures and you made the judgment that it would be appropriate and that you would feel comfortable bringing before the board. But they also were approving a large canvas structure on a seasonal basis. Maybe if there was a vestibule of canvas that kind of looked like the tent, maybe you would find that to be a little bit more consistent look, and that would be more acceptable for the seasonal thing.
We did talk last year about this dilemma, also in conjunction with another special permit, a residential property that wanted to enclose the porch and used boat canvas, a deep maroon, whatever, with the idea that was a nicer looking than a white vinyl. So I guess that's sort of,
Yeah.
I'm reiterating, we have discussed canvas and we've approved canvas. And maybe that's sort of consistent with what Stacy and Craig were saying about a plan to tie the tent with the design. And I'm not saying, oh yeah, now let's say that canvas is okay. I'm just saying it's a different idea that
For the vestibule?
yeah, for the vestibule.
Match.
I don't think that's gonna help you in a month though.
That
When you need it.
would be consistent with the tent, maybe you'd find it okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I wouldn't rule out anything,
Scott, really quickly, where are you on, and again, what small changes do you think you could at least come up with? Is this even possible? Are we going?
I honestly don't.
Okay,
To be
that's,
honest,
yeah.
There's a really good chance that we would just say we're not gonna put the money into it. And then when it's cold, we close, so.
No, and I'm just looking for how, I know you're speaking on behalf of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, at some point, we make changes for, I understand all the reasons for the congruency of looks, for the siding for the congruency of looks of a roof. But then also, we could do a different siding that's similar to other historical structures. We have two different roof lines that match. And there's no actual, and all of this is based on what we all think looks good. And because there's no actual rules governing it, so we can do all of this. Let's say we make some changes to something that looks good in a month. But then the next time there is governance around it, if it doesn't fit, then it's still more money getting put in. So this iterative process of something that we just want to keep people warm and we want to keep the doors open for longer. Want it to look good. I mean, it's this front of a building. I get it. I mean, we want it to look good too. I mean, we don't know what direction to go in. All we have is what we think might look nice. But nothing, there's no governance around it. So then by next year, if there is governance, which we thought there was going to be, if we have to change it again, that's more money that we're putting into something that we're just trying to not lose money over the course of the winter.
Well,
So
I think-
it's a tough thing, and you were right, Craig, money shouldn't have anything to do with the look of what we're going for in the village. You're 100% correct, that it's not about saying, hey, but you're out of money, that's not a good reason, you're correct, but that's what we're putting it up for, is to just extend our season in cold winter months and not lose as much money over in December and January and February, so.
And I guess I would just add, it isn't that there is no idea of what would look good. We're saying the roof line is a problem and we're saying the materials. So
The siding part of it, I understand. We could do siding that would look exactly like the building, and then that's probably the easiest path, as opposed to doing like, but also apparently cedar shake could be.
Well, I just threw that out there.
Right, so this is where I'm like, I don't, the clear path to what is allowable, I don't know. If you made it look exactly like the same siding, I get it, that would be okay.
Clapboard would be a
That
lot
would-
easier
yeah.
than cedar siding.
But then the roof, I still don't know what the roof, I don't know what the roof needs to do, so.
Well, what if we put the roof kind of on the back table and
And I also
Talk about the
don't know
siding.
how much, I don't know how much we're gonna spend on it either, so.
I think if this wasn't if this was the first year, it would be a little bit different. The problem is it's the fourth year. And I'm not trying to argue, like I told you before, Scott, I'm supportive of the idea of a vestibule. I just wish it wasn't the fourth year of an expectation of a temporary thing that really doesn't have a plan going forward of a permanent thing. I would rather see an application for a permanent structure that matches a permanent tent-ish structure, that like a pergola, and then we're gonna get to that in the next one, that they would line up together. Maybe it's roll up vinyl sides, or we unsnap them and take them off for the spring, and now I've got a nice, and it matches kind of like what Jim was saying. That's what I personally would wish was it was an application for here's our plan for, our long-term plan. That's all. I'm, again, supportive, just trying to.
A little history, that Tin Pan one year put up a temporary vestibule in front without a permit. I went after them and said you didn't have a permit for it. Then they came back and said, can we finish the year without any issue? And then they came back the next year with a permanent structure.
Right, and that's, I guess, when looking at these things, it's not as if we haven't brought them up before. This is, again, the conversation that has been going on almost since the beginning. What is this to look like? And again, even with this application, we don't have what it currently looks like. So even if we were to approve this, we've got to, right now we have to table this because we don't even have a full, complete project. To say that it looks like last year's is fine, but we won't even have that on our record. And we at least need to be like, here's the picture from last year to go in there with that one. And we don't even have that. So, and that's why I think trying to buy you, I don't want to say some time, but also some wiggle room to say, all right, it is going to be on this one from last year, but we'll put this rate on it. Does that make everyone happy? But we don't know those things either. What you had this is your building. What is your vision for it? And if it's what it is right now, what we said last year is you're kind of against it right now. And again, this is the board. It wasn't just one person or two. was the kind of what everyone up here
Would it
agreed.
make you feel more comfortable if he explored the siding issue?
I mean, I personally, I'm fine with it the way it is. But that's not, again, for a governing board, I don't get to go off of how I feel. I have to go by what I have in front of me and then everyone around me. Just trying to make sure that, again, kind of going off of Craig, we don't see you in another year having the same conversation and these same issues, that we can say, listen, you've done your due diligence. We're happy that you got this and we're helping out your business, and anything we've done to help you, we're glad to. And if we've caused some obstacles, apologize, but that's our job here. And if we could see that and at least say, yep, that looks good, we've approved it, put it in there. But right now, every time you bring something into us, we have something to say about it. And we've allowed that structure to be there, even though we have not always wanted it the way it looks up there. And then for you to just bring in the one with the things we noted last year to say, yep, we're just putting it in again. You know, that's hard for a governing board to say, well, you didn't do what we asked you to do last year. Here.
The top of page 4 of 13 has got the wrong square footage.
What's that?
Dimensions probably are correct, 8 by 6, but it says 20 square feet.
Where are you seeing this? On the top of
Page 4 of 13.
right.
Second block.
Yeah.
I don't think it's 15 feet high, but
It might be.
I mean,
of the decibel?
Probably at the peak.
It's probably max to max to max.
No, the building would have to be 30 feet high for that to be 15 feet.
I don't know.
high. The building,
And that's, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's the 10th that's 15 feet high.
Well, so where are we with this, guys?
I would like to table this, that we do not have a complete application.
And let's,
Because we don't have any specs of this project with the one from the year before. We have, and again.
well, we
even on
don't
some-
really have.
Right, we have some of these.
We don't have the drawing.
Have drawing, and again, that way, we've, just to table it, so that way we can get.
I think we
Okay.
did have drawings in the past, didn't we?
Yep, of the, again,
Okay, but let's be specific so that I would like to have the applicant return. I don't want the applicant to walk away and say, all right, planning board shut us down. We can't run a business anymore, because that's not what we're doing. I would feel really terrible if that's the message you take back, because I don't think anybody here is saying that. So I think we need to try to be specific and say, well, we need to see a drawing or a photo of last year. And then maybe with the dimensions, and then what would you propose to do differently? Horizontal clapboard siding to match, or keep it the way it is with the siding? Maybe you think that's best.
I think it might be helpful to summarize again and maybe it's got something that he can take back to, what your comments were. You reluctantly approved it last year.
Right here, I have a copy.
Okay,
The findings.
yeah, the findings.
Yeah.
I think a copy of that and then let them address what they can address
Right,
those findings, and at least it shows some movement and
right,
that and some documentation, pictures.
right. But I want it to be specific. So a photo of last year, let's say you said,
or
we're
anything.
not buying anything new. We're gonna ask you to prove what we already had. And here it is, this is its size, but we're going to do this, to improve its look. One, change the siding or keep the siding, but I don't know what your improvements are gonna be.
So what we have
Yeah.
to do first, and just what we have to do for a special permit, we have to come up with a rationale. We have to, and that's like, what would be helping, it's these ones in here, a narrative describing how proposed use will satisfy the criteria in 8.4, which is then a little bit later, it's all of those findings. And we have to, like, that's what that part is, like, so that we can actually justify granting you this special permit. And that way we've got the documentation that says, here's why we're granting it to you. And that's what those findings are.
And an important component of this to me is, yes, you're right. We told you the village was going to be looking into this. Not a perfect world. It didn't happen. And there was a meeting 2 weeks ago to start this process. Looking at things like the tent and the vestibule would fit in that category. Personally, my concern with this, your tent and the setting has kind of grown on me. It's like a lot of things like, oh, I don't like the color of that bright greenhouse. Then after a year or two, that greenhouse doesn't look so bad. You know, you kind of get used to something, but what you've put in the setting with the brick retaining walls and you move now jumping into the tent, the propane to the back and you had some decorations and then the stove and the chairs. It's like, it looks like a cozy setting and it looks like it's a temporary winter arrangement. My concern with how we deal with that is not so much your situation. I think it's very possible that we could have similar requests next April for tents like that on Main Street. For the heat of the summer, we want a tent to serve lunch and we want a tent to make a beer garden. We want a tent to display our antiques outside and not have to tote them in we could have 5 or 6 tents on Main Street. Is that what the Village of Sackets Harbor wants? For 5-6 months in the summer and 5 months in the winter? We do this for Whiskey Coop. Then when another property owner says, I want this for April, May, June, July, August, September. Oh, no. Well, guys, you let them have it. What do we say? So I think we need to be on pretty solid footing when we say yes or no to something. So we are consistent and not just favorites or blindly, so that's a big concern to me.
And kind of off of that, if I may, I kind of agree with, Craig, you saw me nod in my head, you said you'd like to see a permanent solution. Obviously, that's an investment that, the owners would have to weigh, but a permanent solution addresses them forever. They don't have to keep coming back. They don't have to deal with a change in board and maybe a change of attitude and a change of, what they would find acceptable with they're approved. It's kind of memorialized and it's permanent.
And I think in terms of the vestibule, any revisions that would equate to additional investment. I can see you would say, well, what if the village board says something that makes your new investment inconsistent? I don't really have an answer to that other than I think the track record here, it would still come before the planning board, is you're striving to improve it. And let's say you make some changes in the siding. Now it's more consistent and that would leave the roof pitch inconsistent. And so most likely there might, I don't know how, but I don't think.
I have 2 comments. One, and I understand what you were saying, Craig, and you do want to see some type of progress but I hope the minutes will reflect that they have made progress in the past. They have acted on some of our comments in the past. It's not like they've ignored them. So they have done that. The second thing is, I think from a practicality standpoint, trying to envision place to make a permanent structure there would really impede the flow of the outdoor business in the summer.
No, it doesn't necessarily.
No, I don't think it would.
I think a creative.
It all depends. You'd be changing some of the stone walls.
In my mind, if it was me and money was an object, I would put a pergola up. I would put 4x4s or 6x6s with, open air slats and have roll up sides, or if it's, or removable sides to go around it, in a dark brown or some kind of beige.
That you could cover in the wintertime.
And I'm just thinking of both the vestibule and the tent. So they both match. They're both all open air. You don't lose any visibility or sunlight. walk right through. That's just my.
Well, he'd want it covered in the winter. I mean, that's the
Of course,
purpose of the festival.
yeah, but you already have the pergola becomes the superstructure for whatever you want to put over it. That's in my mind. I'm not trying to, Scott, I'm not trying to, sorry.
I mean, you just described an open air pergola that also has permanent
Yeah,
roofing on there. That's and also, so,
No,
You take the,
yeah, we do these things to extend our business during the winter months when everything is slow and quiet and we try to not lose money because we lose money. Our motivation to make a year-long business in the village is predicating on the village being busier in the winter months. So, I mean, there's chicken and the egg there.
No, I get,
that's a catch 22 because there's more places open in the wintertime. We become busier in the wintertime.
Right.
And I think like Goodfellows answered their question with their glass doors, garage doors, so to speak. And that's, I'm not saying, because it wouldn't, people don't have big enough space to do that. But they figured out a way to make it so it's a permanent structure that they can open up in the summer, close up in the winter, so that they can still use that patio. And I think Stacy's saying that there's some way that you guys might be able to design something that would be cost effective, but would allow you to be open year round. And be open in the summer to let the breezes come through and close in the winter to not let the breezes come through. Would be probably the ideal way to go. And then again, we give approval to that. You don't keep coming back every year and spending another $50 on permits.
well, and that's what I was just gonna add. It's, where I'm looking at this from, I'm not the business owner. I don't know what would be best permanent or not. What I would really like, and no offense to you, I like seeing you out the village, but not here as much. Why? I would like a structure that we can say, because on a special permit, we put the time on it. This is approved for the months of blah, 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 for the next. And that way there is some sunset on it, but we have a structure that
didn't we
is.
do that last year?
No, but we did that for a year because what we brought up were these issues. And we gave it a year sunset. We gave it a year sunset and you said, yep, well, we can see what we can add on to it. And we gave it that year sunset. If we had a structure in there that I would be, I don't want to say that the board will be fine with saying, yes, this is a structure that will be good for, I don't want to say perpetuity, but we can at least give you a little bit more leeway in time. So that, agreed, you're not coming in here every year for $50 to put in the same thing that we know we already have up there, because we do have that ability to some degree in a special permit. We have that, we can put the time constraints on it, as long as, again, I think this is a working relationship in this one. It's best when to have it on there. If we have a structure that we're like, yeah, maybe this will get you 2 years, 3 years. Hopefully by that time you do have some permanent ideas. If not, as long as the integrity of this structure doesn't deteriorate, because that will be other issues. What happens when a good snowstorm comes through and barrels that over, or things happen to it? And, now you've got to replace it with another temporary structure. At least at that point, we can all sit up here and say, this is a structure that will be good for for some time. So we don't have to keep doing this. Does that make sense? And I feel like and again, this last 3 years, we've been kind of going back and forth to get us to here. And then this would be the last one to say, all right, clapboard painted, looks good. Match the trim. Food. Okay, if you're going to use it from October to April, those are our time constraints for how many years we can start looking at using as the requirements of a special permit, if that makes sense, so that we don't keep doing this. It's not a permanent structure, because I don't think that's going to happen the next time.
One thing I was gonna say is, we talk about permanent governance from the village board. Yeah, that's a crapshoot. You don't know what you're gonna wind up with at all. And concerns like Janet brought up about setting a precedent, having other people wanting tents and pergolas and whatever else in the historic district. Those are all things that can be taken into consideration. But I think this village has a record of trying to work in the best interest of the businesses, the best interest of the residents, while maintaining the historical integrity. And I think that can be said about the planning board too. And the fact that you done year by year approvals, questioning some of the things still shows a willingness to work with the business.
And the,
But like you said, it'd be nice to get to the point where it's not year by year and it's maybe a permanent solution.
a permanent temporary structure. The line that I'm reading that is kind of hinging, and again, it's number 9 when we have to do this summary of the why we're granting special
What page are
approval.
you on?
I'm on page 60. When we do that findings required, and some of them are, will be I remember doing some of this stuff when we did the tent, will be accessible to fire and police and blah, 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 blah. That's why we question it. But there's the subject number 9, will be subject to such conditions on operation, design, and layout of structures and provisions of buffer areas as may be necessary to ensure compatibility with surrounding uses and to protect the natural, historic, and scenic resources of the village. That is that sentence in there that I think none of us can really put our fingers on what that looks like. You can at least come back and say, this is what we think that looks like. Say, that is on your end. This is what we think would ensure the compatibility of the surrounding areas. And then you present that into us and, we say yes or no. But at least then that way, when we're doing our rationale, especially if we're looking to possibly give a longer, part on this one. What is also not part of always this conversation, how much sometimes heat this board gets for having those things on. Not everybody enjoys those nights in there. And that is another asset to that. So that way, again, we're just doing our due diligence to not only the businesses, but the community at large. And, if we can, I don't want to say satisfy that number 9, that we have made the business at least try to do that. And this is what they present to us. It's not our job to tell you what to do, but you bring it to us and then we can go from there. Does that make sense? So I think a clapboard, again, a basic, just see where that starts you, if that is even a possibility. Again, so that we can table this again, we never actually took a motion on it, but if we table it, that way we can bring this up. It is in there. You're not spending another $50. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room until, somewhere in there, you can have some conversations and then we just go from there.
Stacy, I think you and Craig have brought up some very, very good points. And some of which I forget about at times. You brought up some good points. What do we want to do? Do we want to give Scott some things we wanted to come back with? Like,
I think at basic, what are the dimensions? What are the exact dimensions? An image of the one that's currently there.
the drawing of
The
it.
drawing, yeah, and I may remember what's in there, but at least that we've got it in here. And then again, have the conversation, I would be okay if a clapboard painted the same material. To at least see where that conversation leads you, okay? If you go back and it's hard shaking over our head, no, at least we have on this side, very strong side where you're from. And then we're gonna have to have that conversation with our board in a month or so. But at least that way.
From last year.
Yep.
Address those, this is what we could address, this is what we couldn't address, this is how we would address it.
And then at least, again, if there was, if the clapboard's on there, we can paint it, it'll be up before it's up there. You have now, again, we've taken that next step and you have taken that step. I wouldn't say us, you have taken that next step. That would maybe get us to having much longer so we don't have to keep
Who
doing
did
this.
those renovations back before it was Whiskey Coop? Was that couple that owned it when it was painted bright yellow and created
Oh,
an
that
uproar?
was
Rolling.
Ross Rowland and his wife, Karen.
That's right. So they put that siding on there.
But they did it because clapboard was consistent and wide clapboard
Right.
was consistent with historic structures in the historic.
That's what I was saying. Maybe they had some extra. Is there a basement in that little building?
Oh, yeah.
So it might be some
No,
just.
no.
Not-
Things I was gonna say is you make reference to the findings and you have to do that. The forms that Janet discussed earlier is kind of like memorializing your findings, and making a way of doing it, based on CLG's input. That's all done because, as Stacy said, the village has gotten complaints about the tenant. And when they can point back and say, this is how and why we approved it based on these findings, it helps kind of diffuse those complaints. The other thing is, it hasn't happened, but it could. A resident or another business could challenge it in Supreme Court and say that the village is not consistently applying its own law or review or looking at historic guidelines and abiding, by what they suggest. We can face a legal challenge from any.
Because we have required that of other property owners. It's like, wait a minute, I invested. Why are you? Which is part of why I'm concerned looking ahead to the future. It's like, we're dealing with this in the fall. I see no reason why this won't come up in the summer for the same purpose. I mean, we ran it post-COVID and it's like, oh, I want to have tables out on the side. I want to have it on the sidewalk. I want to have it in the back. And encroaching on what's regarded as public space. Well, I have a side yard. I'm gonna put up a tent in the side yard, so it's sun and rain. Our umbrellas don't, it could be endless. And where do we stop with that without, being inconsistent? That's the part that really concerns me.
Saying no to everything.
Right,
Right,
and we
right.
don't wanna do that.
Or saying yes to everything and then it's free for all done.
All right, so let's,
So I make a motion to table this.
Second,
all in favor? Aye.
Due to it's not a complete application. Due to it's not a complete application.
And for the record, we're providing the applicant with a copy of last year's statement of findings and which specifies the concerns. And I did jot down the pages of the zoning law for special permit, site plan, and the historic review board. And then put that you would provide information on the current, an image of the currently used structure and its dimensions, and then any proposed changes such as siding and otherwise. And I'm back next month.
Scott, what's your date for wanting to put the festival back up?
Probably not. We like to hold off as long as possible on that, just because it's,
It might be in November.
yeah, I mean.
Well, we approved this last November.
Right, yeah, we like doing that as late as possible, just because it's not as good of a, especially on the nice days when you can wheel the whole stand outside,
Yeah.
like kind of, yeah, in nice weather, when it's cold and nice out, that's kind of a blockage for your customers to come in.
We prefer to not have it.
Yeah. Put it off as long as possible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, almost an hour of good discussion.
That was just that first one.
We did. He made the motion, you seconded
Seconded
it,
it.
all in favor, and it was all aye.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Next one. Kind of a continuation. Number 24-63 Whiskey Coop. An application to install the tent for extended seating capacity. It is also in the National Register District and Historic Overlay District. We have a public hearing scheduled. Okay, I was searching for some paperwork here. Okay. Same applicable sections of the law are required guidelines, the historic district design review or special permit criteria. has been regarded as a change of use. It's an open patio. Now it's becoming a semi-enclosed temporary structure. And last year we addressed some of our concerns quite successfully. The propane tanks were relocated to the rear, and that was a visual and aesthetic concern and safety. We were concerned about the location and the use of the propane heating structures inside the tent regarding safety with hay bales and ventilation. And we, the applicant came back to us with a drawing that showed the location of the heaters and the dimensions to the roof of the, or the ceiling, I guess, of the tent and the side walls. And we were in general concerned about overall fire and safety considerations. We had a statement of findings, again, no significant adverse impact. We talked about it, that the village would revisit the regulations. We now have said openly that that hasn't been completed. Fire and safety considerations as well as aesthetics were discussed by the board, including heater specifications, tent material specification, placement of heaters in relation to the tent and other flammable materials such as the hay bales, location of the propane tanks, as well as the role of county and New York State code inspections. Board granted approval with the conditions. Tent it be through April 30th, 2024. Any future tent usage must be reviewed for consistency with the historic overlay district criteria and all provisions and of the law. And then the last, the applicant takes full responsibility for assuring compliance with all fire and safety code regulations. And we had general concern and that it doesn't appear because it's not a structure, Jefferson County doesn't inspect it for safety. Let's take care of seeker. The applicant did provide the seeker form. Just a second. And as before, page 2 of 13, it doesn't require a zoning board of appeals. So I'll check that as no. And then on page 3, it is permitted by a special permit. Those are the only 2 items that would need to be revised, and I can give that to you, John. If you don't see it. Based on the resource concerns listed in part 2 and 3 of the seeker law, I feel it's reasonable to determine that there would be no significant adverse impact on the environment. I'd like to make that motion. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Paperwork. And in the application, it does have what you included last year. Heater 1 and heater 2, those are the on the ground, on the floor, brick heaters, 2 propane tanks in the rear, a schematic of the tent dimensions, and the distance from the heaters to the walls. And based on regulations we reviewed a little bit from other communities, we determined that one of the ways to deal with heater safety is to say that the heater should be set up in compliance with the manufacturer's specifications. So that's what you did. And that worked pretty well for you guys?
It was no, honestly, it was no different. We keep the heaters to the middle anyways, because that's where they make sense.
Right. Right. Okay,
and then the moving the tank and re-plumbing that.
and that worked okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay,
And back on page 4, the dimensions of the tent. I always get hung up on dimensions and setbacks, but we got a 25 feet high, 20 feet wide, and 30 feet in length. It's 30 and 20 feet wide, but I think it's only 13 feet high.
The,
on your,
is there a difference from the schematic to the?
environmental
to
form?
What was?
Yeah.
Is there a difference between the schematic and what was submitted?
Yeah,
Yes. So the schematic is right?
I know the schematic is right.
Okay,
yeah.
Which page?
At page 4,
Yeah, you've got 25 feet in height. Should it be 13?
2.5 stories.
yeah, circus tent.
Yeah,
bro, you're really on the detail.
Oh, jeez.
Nice. Whew.
Gotta contribute.
Wants to know where these 2, 3-story buildings are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So it's
once it's,
13. All right, well, add that to the revision here. Thank you, Murph. All right, so now that we're into this one.
You have to do a public hearing now.
Yeah. All right, let's do that since there is no public. I'd like to open the public hearing. Well, there might be somebody on Zoom. I think there is somebody on Zoom.
There's one of our other applicants.
Right, well, maybe that person has a comment on the Whiskey Coop tent special permit. As a property owner across the street. Hey there.
Thank you, Janet. I just really love eating at the Whiskey Coop, so that's my public comment. Thank you.
Coming to us live from Colorado.
As well.
Okay. Any other comment? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Okay. I will begin with just a comment on this. I know we have looked at concerns about aesthetics and as well as safety. I'm satisfied with our safety provisions we did last year. And I don't have any other concerns, anything new. And as I said, I don't love the idea of white vinyl tents up and down Main Street throughout the year. And I would grapple with what to do if we had 3 or 4 next spring. What do we say if this is something we've said is okay for 4 years in a row? If the village looks at this and determines as a community decision, yes, that's okay, then I'm fine with it. But right now, it's not according to our law. However, I have a little different feeling about this than the vestibule. Because seasonal tents are on the radar committee specifically, or the committee on the radar of the committee charged with this. So I know it's going to be discussed, whether it's thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up with the following conditions. I'm pretty confident a year from now, there will be something different for us to look at. So that's just, I'm feeling a little different about this than the vestibule which I know they want to have every year.
I guess with your concern about other vinyl tents popping up in the village or being requested in the village. If this is in a limited time frame, like as we did last year, and it's like November through April, then anybody else would also say, but you did it there, yeah, but November through April, but not for the rest of the year.
Right, but what
So-
if a summer-oriented business wants to have it April through October?
Then you can say no.
Well, what's the difference? 4
Time of
months
year.
now?
The time of year, it's
Okay,
done the other because of weather.
But maybe their
It's the
weather
same
is
argument.
rain and heat.
Same argument, both sides.
It's
Yeah.
just a different kind of weather. It's hot and sunny
Weather,
and
Yeah, I
rainy.
think you can, the danger to the general public to eat outside without the tent in January. Wait a second, this is what you have to look at, is much different from the danger of sitting in a tent, looking at some artwork in July when it's 80 degrees outside. That's a lot different.
Well,
It's a safety matter.
yeah. Anyway, you're,
Well, and I would piggyback, I would say if a business wanted to do that in the summer, that is more out of convenience. This is more out of necessity. You can't actually, I mean, if you wanted to try to. So you do have the seating there. The seating is there. It's not like it's being somewhere else. Now, if you want to walk that food out there, you can't do that. So this is actually enhancing your footprint already. Whereas in like, oh, I just want to put a tent outside. Why? You have, it would be like the same thing. Like if Tin Pan wanted to put plastic over their bar, they already have the seating for that there. It has already been established. They're not adding new. Versus if some place outdoors says, oh, I want to do a pop-up tent right here. Wow, you have an air conditioned place right in there and you're not actually, you don't have the seating for that. These two places do. I would say maybe looking at in the difference of then, okay, so you've got your establishment again, and then we don't want to compare, but just looking at the, then versus like Goodfellas on the side, they are actually creating more space, additional space, which, I don't want to say we can't do, or, that hasn't been before us, but part of it like, that's a parking lot. It is a parking lot. Now, we can't tell them what to do with it, but that's his business. If he wants to serve food out there in the winter, that'd be kind of crazy, but he's already got the seating there for it.
well, but where's your argument fall with, say, we've already approved architectural plans for Tin Pan. It has not been built. What if the applicant comes in and says, you know what? With the cost of building materials, blah, 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 I cannot build that. I want a big white tent over my currently existing seating area.
I would say, give me the specs, the plans and all this
Big
stuff
white
that
tent.
we
You
made
got
them.
it, you got it. Big white tent, same, I want the same tent.
Would say this is what we made him do.
All right, but he'll draw a picture and put his big white tent on the nice historic brick
He
patio.
would then have to take action with the governing board that's here.
Right,
They're not adding more.
no,
Someone put that, and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
That is a difference where, maybe this tent city that we are envisioning popping up, that would be in addition to what is already there. The seating's there. They're trying to maximize the use out of it. And now, again, if Tin Pan or some of these places brought them up, we would do to them what we had to do with Scott a year ago, if not more. But I'm saying the difference is from this, the idea of maybe the sandwich shop wanting to add a tent out front. You don't have seating out there.
right,
You don't have any seating out there. That would be an easy no, because your seats are actually going to be in the way of everybody versus a business that already has the established place for it.
Yeah.
They already have, it's there. Same thing with Tin Pan, there are places like that. Then now it's a little bit of a different scenario than just popping up a tent out front to throw up a couple picnic tables, the ice cream stand or something like that.
Your views of that are probably what the committee would need to memorialize in language. And then it's addressed, and then you can say, no tents in the summer, if that's what the committee comes up with, the board approves.
Well, part of your problem with that might be that, and I haven't seen one the last couple of years, but I know sometimes receptions held at Tin Pan
Right.
have had tents in the backyard. It's only for that weekend.
right. And
Or
that's okay.
temporary,
We,
but-
we allow for temporary, like,
Right.
what is the thing? Is there a 3-day special event, something?
No, I don't even think that, but that's what the committee can address.
Right,
And with that in mind, it would be my suggestion that as much as, Stacy was saying, it's nice to try to come up with a solution that we can look at for multiple years. With the tent, I think you're gonna almost need to go on a year by year basis because it is something that's gonna be addressed by the village board. So
I mean, boathouses had tents on the deck and for weddings, and that's not been a problem. Everybody goes, oh, there's a wedding this weekend, and then it's down.
but I think maybe we're gonna see some language
Yeah,
memorialize that, so that you can say it's okay for 3 days, but it's not okay for 4 months.
right.
That will help with that if that's the direction the village wants to go.
So I guess all this said is I guess I would be comfortable for another year doing the tent with the understanding the committee's underway to deal with temporary special permits, specifically including tents, because this, in fact, the reason we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago is they said, hey, it's getting cold. I bet you $100 we get an application from Whiskey Coop pretty soon. The next day it was in the village office. You know, it's like, I know. And I want to accommodate this. And I thought we'd be in an easier place, but we're not. But it's
Is this the zoning committee?
Yeah.
we're talking-
you're welcome to join it. It's a lot of fun.
No, I was at it a number of years ago.
Not the zoning
easy.
board, but you know, anybody can join.
No, but I guess in my comment, if this, let's say next year, one of these, any establishment, I mean, again, I always do, I bring my kids down and we bake in the ice cream stand. That ice cream is melted before it hits my son's mouth.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a tent make sense over there? Well, maybe, but again, I'd say you've already got the established seating here.
Yeah.
You know, putting it all the way out there isn't gonna make,
Right.
that is you pick that business.
Or
You-
something else that
Right.
looks aesthetically.
Right, that if you would have versus then again, you already have an established place there to have people there.
I think a tent over that, your ice cream's gonna melt faster.
Right, like it just, would- and then we could say, and again, because while we want to have consistency over all of them, it will be a place by place by
It's
place.
appropriate to move that we have a complete application.
Well, that's up to you guys. So,
I
yeah.
move that we have a complete application.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Greg, I was giving you a chance to second something so that.
Oh, I see.
Trying to say it in the minutes.
So you get in the minutes.
Sometimes you gotta jump right in.
Okay, so what do we talk about further with this?
This, I'm fine with this.
This is
Is that a motion?
No,
I think.
I mean, it's discussion.
Yeah,
This is the same comment, says it's just reversed now, because we're now in tent matching the.
right.
And I'm supportive of it. But I feel like it should be a yes, but maybe last time until we get a type of permanent plan
Oh,
next year
yeah,
or something. You know, like, I don't know, that's what I'd like to see, Scott, is, and I know that we might disagree a little bit on that, but I'd like to see this happen, but we need to have a permanent plan forward. And that would be my biggest comment.
I agree. If I vote for this as presented, it would be totally with the condition that it's for 1 year. And it's the propane tanks remain in the rear, the heating area, and with the assumption that the village will have visited this specific topic thoroughly in the review of special permit temporary structures and uses or
With the
guidelines.
expectation or with I mean,
With
because
the,
if they do not, I guess my question isn't next year, happy to come back and say we're putting up our temporary tent.
well,
But
yeah,
but if they do not address it, I guess is that verbiage harmful?
What does that mean? I'm not sure I understand.
well, right now, there are no guidelines. Are temporary tents allowed at all? No, they're not. But we're trying to make something a temporary structure.
We're violating our own law by trying to.
And we've talked about things like
For cause.
a pergola frame that, is like a canvas thing. We talked about that last year. And so what would be more aesthetically pleasing or consistent with our historic district than a white vinyl tent? I don't know the answer to that, but this group that's going to be discussing it's got to come up with some guidelines.
The other
Like-
thing, when you talk about like a program and stuff like that, and you talk about the months of operation, our peak tourism season is the summer. And that's when you really want to highlight and show off your historic structures. Some some of the language in our zoning, talks about landscaping, things like that. It's restricted if it's gonna block the view of a historic structure. So if you're talking about putting up a pergola, is that a different kind of impact that has to be
Right.
taken into consideration? And Stace, you made some good points about you've already got the seating and other places don't, they just wanna have a pop-up tent. They don't have the justification. But even the places that have seating could, if they put up a tent, it could have an impact on the view of a historic structure. So these are the things that I think that committee's gonna be grappling with.
That's why I agree. I would like something a little bit more consistent. My thought is, I love going down there and we're looking at a timepiece in which you're not busy. And you're just trying to, for these two structures, if you actually put in a permanent structure, that might be adversely affecting your summer business. Because you might have, like, you're taking seating away, you know what I mean? Like if you put in a pergola in the middle, that could be a table of 8 for 4 months out of the year in which you're just trying to squeeze every dollar out of it. And that's where I'm kind of coming from. I want to make sure that, well, maybe not, it's helpful to your business and that you're not hurting again the surrounding areas.
It's actually harmful to the boathouse to have it up.
Right?
Yeah.
Blocks them.
Blocks the Quonset hut, the historic Quonset hut.
I get quote unquote threats of Brandy every year about how.
But a permanent structure would make it even worse because
Yeah.
you would never see it. Or you'd be like, you'd have these things here and be like, what is that behind it? Versus,
Doesn't learn to stand out front like Ross used to with his little sailor truck.
So, yeah, I think provisions that were included last year are appropriate this year, and what does that mean for next year? I don't know, but I think there will be something more
I think you're very
solidified.
optimistic.
You think I am?
I sat on the zoning rewrite committee for 11 years before this got adopted.
Oh, but there were things like with short-term rentals and solar and other revisions.
Well, some new stuff. No, I
Yeah.
mean, this was 11 years in the making.
I know. We're not talking about
We
doing the
also
whole deal.
redrew the historic district guidelines about
And
4
that's how long
times.
ago I went off the zoning board.
Well,
But for that reason, I think it needs to be year by year, but I think you've addressed a lot of things. You've got good, solid findings. If they're gonna come back with essentially the same plan and you're comfortable with what you've approved before in the past, it shouldn't be a difficult approval as much as he has to do it yearly.
and I feel like some part of why I feel like it's okay, besides the safety considerations, the other little amenities that were incorporated. I mean, you can't tell somebody to decorate, but you had some seasonal decorations and you had the fire pit and the chairs and, I've been in downtown Ottawa in the winter and there's outside seating like this, it's like a whole, it's a package deal. Yeah, and in Lake Placid, and so it's the whole appearance, not just white tent. So, all right, so somebody,
and they've done their due diligence on this one. We gave them a list last time. It was checked every time. And there's no reason to now, again, I want to say perpetually moving forward, but if this is as far as we get it with boards, maybe this is the one time we see it for a quick little, because we have gotten the ground. And then if other people come in with these tents, we have the key findings to say, well, this is what we made these guys go through the first time, a couple times. Are you prepared? It's not just putting up a white tent. We really did force you to do a lot of homework on these things. And you did it even in this one, type of stuff. The application is improved year by year. So that's where I would be in favor.
So I'll move, we approve, oh, you're gonna do that.
I was gonna get to that one. I move to approve the application as submitted.
I second it.
There you go.
Special permit.
First, special permit
and,
with the rationale that was used last year.
with the updated language that the issue is being reviewed, but it's not yet it's not concluded.
And the key findings were met by the applicant from last year and are consistent with the plan for this year.
What's the timeframe on that?
Is it this, do we still have
April
this,
30th, 2025.
we have the same from last year?
Yeah, I mean, I have to update it.
Yep, but yeah, with the same time frame as last year.
Okay, so the motion was made and it's second. Egg. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Got a 1-1.
You're batting 500.
We went, hey, those are good, those are good. I will.
Is it that the
I know
restaurant business? You broke
I
even.
know this was painful.
That's a good day at the office.
Thank you very much, and I expect to see you in a month.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
Thank you. Later for some fries and chicken.
Just so you know, I emailed you the zoning officer statement regarding special permit.
Thank you.
I had the time to do it tonight.
Thank you.
And I saw it going up to me, I was like, well, yeah. I could always make you take it down. Yeah. I don't-
Okay,
What's your attachment?
number 24-65. Albany Solar Solutions LLC. The owner of the property is Kyle Parisi. The applicant's address is Troy, New York. It's for residents at 24 Funnyside Drive. And the request is to install roof mounted array for on-site, basically a solar panel configuration on a residential property. So the property is in the village residential zoning district. It does require site plan review. This might be one of those on the new form that's.
Right. Still
It,
confused.
I know. That's why it's not done. I had to keep saying, Dave, I really don't get it.
I'm not confused by this particular.
Oh, this,
Said
yeah,
even.
yeah. Is anybody online for this project? I don't think so.
This project.
Okay,
Can I just introduce what the confusion is?
yes,
The application that you have that was paid for and submitted to the village came from, Albany Solar Solutions LLC. This afternoon, I received a phone call from Liberty Solar Solutions of Buffalo, asking what they needed to do to make application for 206 Sunnyside Drive.
hey, this is 204.
This is 204.
Okay.
So he's looking for better pricing.
Yeah, you know,
So
this
Did
is
you-
paid, and I mean, you can go through motions on this, but it doesn't mean that this one would be approved automatically. They'd have to come before you.
Is the homeowner?
the homeowner's not here, the homeowner's not online. I have not talked to the homeowner.
I've only talked to the one contractor, like I said, and they're the ones that submitted the
That,
application.
you had a
Contractors.
email from a Kimberly, right?
Right.
Oh, that's who signed this.
I'm sh-
And it's a very extensive application with insurance and property information. The technical components of the brackets, the whole deal.
So this just isn't on the roof.
Yes, it is.
Yes. But they're always mounted to stand off. from the roof.
Well, the homeowner did sign.
Oh, it's
They're not
mounted.
flush.
They're not flush. Okay.
Yeah. And there is a seeker form. Um.
Is there a
It was
picture?
206 Sunnyside Drive, so somebody else is doing solar.
Oh,
Aha.
Oh, okay.
That did occur to me, and then when you just said it, I was looking at the page. 2 doors down. Okay, well then,
Well, so next month you might have another solar application.
We can compare which one was
I was gonna
better.
say, we better do this.
Company.
Yeah, we better do this one right then. For next-
Page, does it
show
it?
And,
what's that?
Oh, way in the back.
I'm on page 3 of the seeker form
Mhm.
and everything is blank from there out.
Yeah, I noticed that. I mean,
So,
I missed some.
and I didn't notice that before this evening. I guess I take some responsibility for that. Typically, I would have contacted the applicant, but I didn't.
Well, they don't show a picture, but it does say that it's a roof mounted array.
Yeah,
They show a roof, they show a template of where
No,
it's gonna
not
be.
part of it.
Yeah.
I'll show you this here, it's on the back section.
The backside.
Sketch.
Okay, that's.
so we can't complete seeker this evening because the form's not.
Then this next one shows you how it stands off from the road.
Oh,
Okay.
I mean, I can't see us moving.
I mean, we can't really, officially, we can't move forward, but let's look at some of these things. And
What they
I
might need.
apologize. But on the other hand, if, I guess I also want to say for the amount of in-depth coverage in this application, and this is a New York State business, I'm shocked that 10 of the 13 pages are incomplete. I mean, anybody that, engineers, architects, they're generally familiar with this. So I'm kind of surprised.
I wonder, because everything is like typed in. I wonder if like, or whatever, it didn't load, like it didn't load up and yeah, they had no idea that like this didn't show up in there. You know, they thought they completed it. Oh, we're done with there and that's it. You know,
Before they grab the wrong file.
right, yeah.
Oh, they grabbed the wrong file.
Yeah.
They also,
Okay.
on page 2, said they didn't need anything from the planning board. B,
Oh, right, it says that nothing's required. Oh, I see,
Maybe that's why they left everything else blank. Because they didn't feel.
if yes, complete section C, F, and G. That's what they did.
Yeah.
That, on page 2, that question is very confusing. I've had so many people and try to argue with me about that. Saying, well, this is, and it's like, well, listen, this is how we do it, so we say. But it says, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, law, ordinance be the only approval which will be granted? Well, no, because we are doing site plan review. So administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of the plan, law, or ordinance, that's, we're not dealing with the zoning. So anyway, we cannot proceed without.
That's what they did. They completed C, F, and G, huh?
Right,
Yes.
and I didn't pick up on that. I didn't really look at that, honestly. I did look at the other parts of our law and everything. So, since I need to contact them, let's identify some things that, if there's anything else we want to be, can help them out with. The sections of our law that deal with this. Is a local law that, so it's not, if you're using the old zoning law copy, it's not in there, it's amendments.
Oh, it's.
Yeah, so there's a section, it was local law number 2 of 2021. And it says, basically, there's not a substantial amount of guidance for us, but it says residential solar projects require site plan review by the planning board. But if there was like a big commercial solar project, that would be a different review. That would be a village board, big deal project.
Or land-based.
Land-based, right, but
It could be residential land-based.
right, roof mounted, Yeah, and so then the section, there's a ground mounted and roof mounted. And the part that we have is section 3-13. So it's pretty short. They're permitted as an accessory use to any lawfully permitted building or structure in all zoning districts, okay? They require a building permit from Jefferson County Code, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the height. The roof mounted solar system shall not exceed the maximum height restrictions of the zoning district. Aesthetics. Roof mounted solar energy system installation shall incorporate the following design requirements. Panels must be mounted at the same angle as the roof surface with a maximum distance of 18 inches between the roof and the highest edge of the system. Roof mounted solar structures shall be color coordinated to harmonize with the roof material and other colors of the structure to the greatest extent practicable. And lastly, solar panels shall be placed and arranged such that reflected solar radiation or glare shall not be directed onto adjacent buildings, properties, or roadways.
Wow, well, you gotta do some really good calculations to figure that out
The glare.
all year round. Yeah, because how do you assess that? Because the sun's not in the same spot,
Right.
same arc each day is different.
And then the only other time we did review one of these was on Main Street in the National Register District. And I recall we kind of got scolded for our thoroughness and the impact on historic structures. Remember that?
I don't think I was here with it.
Is there anything behind? I don't know. Is there
Yeah, I
anything, is there
remember
any
that
house?
one, yeah.
Is there a row of houses behind this house?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because that's the only thing I think that would.
Not right now.
Present.
There theoretically, there will be
There's nothing
someday.
back there.
They better hurry up and put it on there.
Yeah,
I don't.
maybe that's why their neighbors
Yeah.
putting it on too. They're gonna
But it
have.
actually might not,
to-
be. It may be, no, it'd probably be back of the house mounted.
It's
Yeah, well, the picture they have here,
Yeah.
it shows on the back of the house,
The house.
back of the house in just about
What
a
does it
third of
say
it.
that?
But also when, if the roof mounted, it's on the same angle as the roof. It's only about this far above the roof.
Because
So reflection is gonna go up. It's not gonna bounce down and go over this way.
Oh, it absolutely does. Just like a mirror.
Yeah, but
I can make that light go that way with a mirror.
if you're on the roof and that roof is already reflective, is that gonna be a problem for the house behind it?
Depends on the angle of the sun. Depends on the angle of the sun. As the sun comes up.
I don't,
I'm supportive of it. I'm just thinking that it definitely can glint.
From the trail behind, you might, you'd see
yeah,
it.
right. You might see it.
Or maybe, I mean, theoretically from my house, looking across the field.
Just saying it's something to
Yeah.
consider. Let's,
But glare shall not be directed onto adjacent buildings, properties, or roadways.
there's no way to,
It won't be
As
direct,
long as it's not directed,
as
Direct.
long as it's not directed.
directed. If it's accidental, I mean, I would say that
There,
that covers maybe your like,
I mean,
Yeah.
there are times, if you're out on the water in a part of the day, a large residential structure with a lot of
Yeah.
glass, you get a huge glare.
absolutely. But it's just
But it's like-
temporarily because the sun moves across the
Right.
sky.
Right.
and I think that's
Reasonable.
like with that one, as maybe you do get some glare. I think you're gonna have some glare
I don't
regardless.
think it's a problem. I just think.
Yeah.
Right, but that will be one where just at least moving forward,
Is
it's
there-
not direct.
Is there any consideration for these, and I'm not that familiar, other than I know that they require a large battery bank. So as we doing this, is there also consideration? I guess that would be part of the code of the person that's doing it. The storage of a whole lot of lithium batteries in your house.
I don't think there is. I think it's a.
They feedback to National Grid.
I understand, but you still have to store it.
No, National Grid does the storage. My
no
sister has one, her house
So
has
this,
no
the purpose of
battery.
this isn't just to,
They're not actually running off of solar,
You're
they're
not
just
running off.
cheapening, they're just cheapening their costs.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
what they're doing is they're, the National Grid is buying from them and they're giving a credit back.
I was looking at it as like a backup generator, like
No.
if they go off, we sure? Is
Not
that,
the same.
how do you,
You know, I think Dr. Johnson mentioned that he had a battery,
I think he did.
but I don't think it was large.
I'm not trying to complicate it. I just didn't know if there was consideration for that, like
I
if there
think
needed to
the
be.
question that was asked when Dr. Johnson had his
And she had there was a rep here, I remember, that,
Oh, they-
went into very, like,
detail.
this is how this works, and, because they had the rep here. But that, explained how it went from, I don't remember if they had a battery, but they had a storage, like a converter.
How do we know that this is a buyback, not a storage?
Well,
application?
we have questions and that they have not provided.
I'm not trying to-
Yeah, no, these are good
So How do you
questions.
know that? How do you know that this, because it looks pretty small. It looks like if I was gonna do it, I'd put the whole backside of my roof on.
Yeah, it is. Looks like-
Yeah, it's just part of the roof, which
That
makes,
may be all they need to
it would
take
make
care
me
of their.
think that it's just a. I don't know.
But
Well,
you take a look at others you see on houses and you'll see a section of 6 here and a section of 4 over here. And they're not using the whole roof, they're only using less than half. Yeah, whatever requirements they need for their residents.
And I'm just trying to understand the.
Well, that's where it comes in. We have questions, we can't get answers. So when I call about the seeker form, I will say it would be very helpful for your project if you have a delegate or a
Make a motion.
representative present.
Yeah,
Because
we're getting to that one. So
Okay,
if you want to go ahead and make it correct.
just as I make a motion, we have an incomplete application.
Second,
that we,
Have an incomplete.
oh, right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so I will.
So then what are we gonna be? So, other than filling out seeker,
Second.
Yeah, I didn't see that. The 3 requirements in D, but.
And we would like to have somebody present or available online and virtually or in person.
there's gonna have to have some type of converter or something in there. As far as I know, at least that what's been presented in here,
Does
we
it,
have no one's got a battery backup system. Like even my neighbor has, she's got like a Generac, right? And if I could have gone after her, but I didn't. 'cause I was
is
like,
there,
Oh, okay.
She's got a small solar panel,
Okay.
Generac that runs smaller
Yeah.
things. You know, they're not even on the roof and stuff.
is there anything
Doesn't
in
make
there
sense.
about
And like for me, I was
of
like,
this?
you're good.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It's
All
on.
right, but in their application, I
Right. But no, they're good
not that I
questions.
saw.
mean, it's just
They're
dark.
not here.
dark
but I was
color.
thinking the new law was gonna address whether you could have it on the front of your roof facing the street,
No, but see, that's where it came into play with
but it
Dr.
isn't. It
Johnson.
isn't in here.
No, but also in conjunction with this, we have the historic district stuff we have to pay attention to. So we have to evaluate the impact of the proposed project on the historic resource, the aesthetics. I mean, all that stuff.
The aesthetic, you're saying that.
Yeah, and we brought that up and the other applicant was challenging us in our like consideration of that we need to get with the times. Oh, like, don't you guys get it?
Oh,
It's like you could ignore historic value if it provides a,
Greater good.
Utilitarian use for your.
It's like, well, thank you for your opinion.
I think that's almost what you said.
Support this stuff, but. All right, so I'll contact the applicant. We have an incomplete seeker form. It would be very helpful to further their application if somebody attended.
Doesn't have to be the homeowner, but the rep, the.
Right, no, I think it should be technical,
Yeah.
and it could be virtual or otherwise. But beyond that, I don't have a specific question. I mean, there's a ton of information there.
I think that Craig does bring up good. Just as, and maybe it's an email. How is this power being used and where is it going? So that if it is going into the house, we do need to have that like on record, I would imagine. Someone wants to put in a generator in their house, do they need to have a permit for that? Not a zoning permit? That's what I'd like.
Like if I wanted to take I don't have a single family house in the village, but if I did and I wanted to go off grid. And I wanted to put solar on my roof and then disconnect the, national grid out of my house, is that okay? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know about electrical or.
I guess you can't make somebody have national grid. I don't know. I was just speaking out loud.
Right. Well, and at least so that way we have at least a statement from them saying this is what it is and what it's for and how it will be used.
The only other thing related to that though is.
Put it in the, put it in the applications.
Our law does say that they have to come to Jefferson County for a building permit. The fellow that called me today was saying, I realize now that I have to get a zoning permit before I can go to Jefferson County, so. He acknowledged that he had to get a building permit.
And that's the second thing on our list, roof mounted systems require a building permit from Jefferson County.
So batteries might be addressed by Jefferson County.
And if that's fine,
It
but
does say utility offset.
Yeah.
Not sure.
what that is.
Yeah.
I think
don't-
that's what it means.
I think
Yeah,
I think you're right. I just didn't know.
clarify that.
the issue with going totally off the grid is that then when it's January and you've got 30 days of not much sun, you may not be able to heat your house.
Right. I would.
Yeah.
Pellet stove. People. I'm
At this
sure.
point, it's theoretical.
Right.
I'm not trying to do that.
Okay,
From the village standpoint, I don't know that there's any, thing with like water and sewer. If the municipal connection is within 100 feet of your property, you have to connect to the village thing. I don't know that there's a requirement that you connect to the national grid.
I can't imagine there would be. I can't imagine there would be, but that's.
Well,
But then-
like all the people that keep sending us stuff in the mail, use us, we're cheaper than National Grid, da, 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 da. You're still being serviced by National Grid.
It's still the delivery. So
Right.
Going to derail the.
okay, all
No.
right, moving on. Application 24-66. Sackets Gallery with a representative being Paul Boucher. It's for 115 West Main Street, a request for a storage shed in the back parking area near Barn Alley. And the application includes the general zoning application, the site plan, and short form environmental assessment form, but we got a long form added to it. Sketch of the shed and a statement by the applicant, including that neighbors have no concerns. A little lot drawing based on the setbacks, the property line to Barn Alley. And a couple aerial photos and the long form seeker. And I believe the applicant's online Zoom. There we go. Hi, Paul. Would you like to elaborate in person for the board on anything?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize that I'm not present in person. My job requires some travel, and this is a critical time for being gone, so I'm sorry I'm on Zoom. I also apologize for the fact that the application was a little bit rushed based on circumstance. As many of you probably know, the situation in the community and how the shed came to be was a very rushed operation from a 6 p.m. phone call to an 8 a.m. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I sincerely apologize about that. We love being in the village. My wife and I have a home right there on Washington and Ambrose, and then this 115 West Main Street property. I certainly want to comply with everything associated with the historic overlay district. And the area where this intends to go, there's already a gravelled, crushed stone parking area in the back on Barn Alley, where there is kind of a wooden structure associated with some trash cans for the tenants. And the building, we love it. The tenants that we have lack a little bit of storage space. And this is an incredible opportunity because bikes, surfboards, paddle boards, golf clubs, all the things that we try and navigate with some of the tenants, this will be a wonderful opportunity for them. And we enjoy being a part of the community, and anything that we can do to make this happen, we will certainly do. The storage shed, when it was removed from its previous location, had a little bit of moisture damage on the bottom of the trim, and a trim board all along the bottom certainly would repair it. That moisture damage did not go into the structure. The structure is sound and perfect and great. It was the wind event or tornado event, however we refer to it, this summer, that the doors were damaged. I plan on fully rebuilding the doors and making them perfect and solid and good. And where we plan on putting it within the parking area will allow parking to remain from Barn Alley to the property. My review of zoning regulations says that 20 feet off of Barn Alley. So the specs that I sent would allow for plenty of that. It'd be right in front of it. And so it will hang from where the current crushed stone is. It's about 5 feet over that. And we will set it on 4x4s on crushed stone and do anything that is necessary to please the board on this topic. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul.
Are we relocating a shed?
Yeah. That's it.
Relocating it, fixing it
Yeah,
up and.
it was on Ambrose. Remember the special permit garage / apartment? It was there. Now it's gone to Barn Alley, and it's moved there, but he wants to place it permanently and had, as he was saying, had the chance.
My
of-
understanding it's not, where you see it now is not the final
Right.
location, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Right, so he just had it dumped there.
It's on the corner of Barn Alley and Ambrose right now, isn't it?
No, kind of on the edge of his property.
Oh, okay.
Those are deep lots.
Yeah.
But what was the gallery, Larry Barone's yellow building?
Oh, okay.
That's the property
Okay. Gotcha.
next door to the sandwich bar.
Yep.
And so its present location, it was put there because when I want to install it permanently, should the board approve, obviously the time frame that I had to work with, I didn't have the crushed stone and the 4x4s and everything. So I placed it in a location where it'd be easy to move back to that location. And I do apologize based on the circumstances, but it was after business hours and I had to do something by 8 o'clock in the morning. So
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So we have to take care of seeker, and there's just a couple things, and Johnny, I can give you the paper, my copy. On page 2 would be the site plan review is required. I've noted that. And by the way, I don't even know how to say the acreage of the site. It's proposed action 0.002754882. And then later on, the net change in the property, it's even harder. I don't know how to say that, but anyway. Anyway, very small percentage. And then on the last page, the Seaway Trail and the National Register District, those are classic little omissions. But I've noted those on the applicant's application. And I have part 2 and 3 completed, and given this scale of this project and location, I think it's reasonable to say that there would be no significant adverse impact on our environment. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah. All in favor?
Readers, I paused.
I know. So did I.
I thought I heard the pause. I was just reading. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing. And there's no public present, and there's no other public present online, so we can close the hearing.
We have the color of it.
I think he said he'd paint the color to what, match the house, is that it, or some other complementary color?
Well, so I would do anything that would please the board. The present color is that barn red with white trim. And I think that with the trim repair on the bottom and the door repair, I mean, my opinion is that it fits well, and what currently is there for the siding is in good condition. It's just a little bit of moisture rot on the bottom. If the board's pleasure is that it would match the color of the home, which is kind of a subtle yellow, I would be willing to do anything. And so this is, you know, conversation, because my wife and I certainly want to fit in the historical district in an appropriate way.
I'm fine with the red, barn red.
I'm
I
fine.
mean, it's barn alley.
Yeah, it's an
And it's accessory built, yeah, it's like it's, all
Fine with the barn red.
right, so the question was, is there a color change? No, so we've got that, and your plan is placing it and it fits the setback requirements, right, Jim?
Well, the property is in the village core, so very, very minimal setbacks. I
Yeah.
think you said 20 feet from Farm Alley. Your setback is only 5 feet.
Right, right,
So, yeah.
Yeah.
More than meets it.
right.
I make a motion that we have a complete application.
Second.
Thank you, Stacy and Merle, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I see no issue with this at all. I think it,
I move to approve.
Second.
thank you, Dick and Craig. All in favor? Aye. You're set.
So thank you all very much. Again, I apologize for not being present. So you all know in the background too, we are very close with both neighbors on either side, Handmaid's Garden and Connie, and we've had this conversation, and then also the Sandwich Bar and Gordy, and also their tenants in their location. And we will continue everything that happens with all of the continued project. We will remain in touch with them and make sure the neighbors are satisfied and everything's good and the tenants are happy. So we appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, Paul.
Right. So. I think we took care of, oh, Stacy, one last thing. Some homework. And, windows and doors. He sent an email and I forwarded it to you late today. I was in New England I got home at like 5 o'clock today, so I didn't do much about things until just before the meeting. But it's not just a document that has lists, this window or that, it has links. So you click on it and it takes you to examples of windows and designs.
Here, it got really screwed up when I downloaded it, but so I basically went through the period houses, ranging from federal to colonial to anything in there. And then looked at, again, what would be possible. I just tried to use some of the verbiage that we had at the top from our zoning, from our own laws, copy and paste it in there, punctuate to make it look like an official document. And then took like just screenshots of what would be acceptable ones. But then what I did, hold on a second. Yeah, if you go to, let's just make sure it shoots you off there. So then, so like if you wanted to see, there's your map.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I put the map in there, and then the other two links are, so like this one. So again, I just put a couple of them in there. If you wanted to actually go to, and these actual links are at the bottom. It just got all messed up when I sent it and downloaded it. But if you went to like styles, notice how you now have more language on, like, you don't know where your house is. Oh, mine's a Georgian house. This is what it should look like. You know, those types of things. Again, so that way I would say, we're talking this as long as you have. We're at least providing information to an applicant to say, here it is, take a look at it, look at what you've got going right now. And then that way, when an application comes in, there's other things too, like it's got actual window styles. Like, right, like if you wanted to, Like you are now looking at multiple
I think did I? speak with-
window,
Yeah.
see what I mean? And then
See
that
what
way.
you Think in terms of approved lists.
Right, it's just a place to start from, and then that way, I mean, feel free to,
One of the problems I have with the concept of an approved list. It says in the law that if it's on the approved list, I can approve it, the application without going through site plan review. But, you know, if like, what do they call Mullins?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was 12/12 and now they're putting in more of like a Craftsman style of that. It's on the list. I guess technically I have to approve it. So I think, you know, the list. I think the way you create the list can be very specific. That's why I've mentioned like with the roofing materials of Madison Barracks. Say limestone buildings, the red brick buildings should have slate type style architectural shingles. You know, I think that's very specific, and then I can just approve applications that come in with that.
But what
if
you're
they were-
saying is if a window had like 6/6 grid and then they were taking it out and putting in something else.
but
If that something else is on the list, then, but I feel like there's something in our law that says if you're making a substantial change or. Because I feel like the design of the window
Right.
changed
Or-
but I'm not sure
But
if the
does-
language is there.
Jim, does that mandate that you'd have to approve?
No,
Or just
no, I
says-
think I could-
says you could look at it and
I could
say you ought to go to the
say,
planning
I don't
board.
feel comfortable with this. Well, I'm sending it to the planning.
Okay,
I
Okay.
think I can do that.
all right.
Because I think there is something like if you're changing.
Right.
The look of the structure. It has to go. I mean, I have noticed that, you know, there's some very popular
what's that, the waterfront?
windows and doors right now
The one that.
that are not really part of what the house fabric style was prior to. It's a handsome door or a handsome window, but is that a fit?
I don't think we have.
You know, and I feel ill prepared to say no or yes, because
No,
I
it's a
don't have
sentence.
training in
And
this
it's
really.
hard to tell from the
I don't know.
drawings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know, potential example of that is Gibson's house.
yeah.
They used to have.
Yeah.
6/6 windows.
Oh, yeah.
They've done these Craftsman style windows. That Craftsman style windows may be very appropriate for the 1920s, you know, vintage house that he has, but it's a change. And, you know, if it's on the approved list, and, you know, am I required or do I put them before you? And, you know, in that case, I've been trying to get him before the planning board, all the changes that he's made.
he's not coming. She's not coming.
Thing I don't understand is they were found guilty in town court. And nothing,
Well, he was chair of the planning board for how many years?
but I mean, I have spent, you know, like 20 some odd years of doing zoning enforcement, trying to get people to voluntarily comply because I have had no luck in the courts. And there's a perfect example. You know, former planning board chair does things without, admits it in court, is found guilty of violating the law, but what's the repercussion? We still haven't seen an application before the board. Frustrating.
Yeah, it's not like.
The bullies win.
Alice, if you don't follow it, they can bulldoze your house.
Adjourn, please.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Hi,
Thank you.
a question on Ambrose Street, the big garage,
That's where that shed came from.
that's where the shed had to be moved from.